Continuation of reading Brendan Dassey trial transcripts, day 2, Kratz questioning Heimerl, continuing on page 52. But on this occasion in Madison, what we did was he happened to utilize sections of scaffolding that happened to be in the basement because of certain remodeling that was occurring, and they proved to be very suitable for our process. We would raise the scaffold planking, or table if you will, to approximately waist to chest height, so it made it more conducive to standing and working in close eyesight. They were covered with tarps. We had supplemental lighting. And the process included bringing a small quantity of debris onto the table in front of you and utilizing a variety of tools or instruments, such as wooden skewers or wooden picks, maybe putty knives or brushes. We would very thinly and finely layer out the debris, and this debris includes soil and sand and burned ash and non-burned or burned non-combustible items. We would layer it out and sift it, if you will, but not with sifting screens, but visually examine it very closely and pick out items that we felt may be human remains, bone material, potentially dental remains, and other non-combustible items, metal items that were left behind in an attempt to determine what they were and if they were relevant to what we were looking for. Do you know an individual by the name of Dr. Leslie Eisenberg? Yes, I do. Who is that? Dr. Eisenberg is a forensic anthropologist with the state of Wisconsin. Is Dr. Eisenberg involved in this process? Yes, she was. Could you describe, and we'll hear from Dr. Eisenberg later this week, but can you describe how she may have been involved in overseeing this process with law enforcement? She was present with us on the first day in December of 2005 in Madison at the crime laboratory and was involved in the planning, if you will, and the implementation of this process, and assisted alongside of us in going through the same procedure. And if an investigator were to recover an item that they felt was potentially bone fragments, she was there and available to make a better determination if it was or if it was not. You talked about bone and other items of evidentiary value. Did those include any metal items? Yes. And could you describe that for the jury, please? There were numerous metal items that were found among this debris, and that included ammunition casings, miscellaneous items of steel, steel belting from tires. In particular, I recall there was a zipper pull recovered. There were clothing rivets recovered, batteries, quite a wide variety of materials. The clothing rivets specifically, I'm going to show you exhibit number 104, ask you to tell the jury what it is that we're looking at. This is a close-up photograph of a clothing rivet, which is identified through stamping on the head of the rivet with the name Daisy Fuentes. Were you involved in the recovery of any of these Daisy Fuentes clothing rivets from this sifting process? Yes, I was. Are you aware of how many Daisy Fuentes rivets were recovered throughout the entire process? 5 of these same rivets recovered. I'm going to have Mr. Wiegert show you, just as an example, what's been marked as exhibit number 112. Ask you to tell the jury what that is, please. This is one of those rivets as identified in this photograph that was recovered from that burned debris. Repackage it. Thank you, Mr. or Agent Heimerl. On March 1 of 2006, were you made aware of the application and receipt of a search warrant for not only the residence but the garage of Stephen Avery? Yes, I was. Tell the jury how, if at all, you were involved in the execution of that search warrant. On the afternoon of March 1, or in the morning hours, I was contacted by Special Agent Fossbender and informed that additional information had been gathered or gained through the ongoing investigation, which included statements from Brendan Dassey, and as a result of those statements, investigators sought and received a search warrant to return to Stephen Avery's residence and garage to look for and potentially collect any additional evidence that investigators felt may be present as a result of this new information. Could you first describe for the jury an overview of the garage? What was it that you saw upon your arrival on the 1st of March? And by the way, this was later on, early evening? That is after Mr. Dassey made his statement, is that your understanding? That's correct. Investigators arrived at the property in the late afternoon hours, I believe approximately 4 to 4:30 p.m. The investigators were divided into 2 separate teams, if you will. One team was responsible for conducting the search of Stephen Avery's residence. The second team, which I was a part of, was assigned to conduct the search of the detached garage. When we arrived, initially I photographed the exterior of the garage. I noted that the personnel door, the walk-through door on the north side of the garage, was locked with a padlock. We made arrangements to make entry into the garage by cutting that padlock. When that was completed, the first thing that was done was the interior of the garage was videotaped. On that day, there was snow on the ground. a relatively good quantity of snow. The overhead garage door was ultimately opened. There was a passenger vehicle that was found parked inside the garage. And after the videotaping was completed, I then conducted photography of the entire interior of the garage, just documenting in an overview fashion of what the interior of the garage looked like. We then basically, 4 investigators that were present, which included myself, Investigator John Dietering from Calumet County, Investigator Gary Steyer of Calumet County, and eventually Detective Dave Remiker of Manitowoc County, assumed general responsibilities as working as this team and came up with a plan, if you will, or objectives as to how we were going to go about searching the garage. I'm going to show you exhibit number 105 and ask you if you can describe what it is that we're looking at here. This is a photograph of the interior of Stephen Avery's garage, obviously with the overhead garage door open. As I took this photograph, I was standing north of the front of the garage, in front of the overhead garage door. This was taken at a point in the evening in which we had done a cursory search, if you will, of the interior of the garage, looking for any readily recognizable items of evidence that we knew, based on Brendan Dassey's statements, that we should be looking for. Some of those had been identified. The vehicle has been removed at the time of this photograph, and we have identified with some of these yellow photographic markers, numbered markers, the location of some items of evidence that had been found to that point. Had you been informed, and was one of the items that you were looking for in this garage a item of paint thinner? Yes. Let me show you what's been marked as exhibit number 106. Ask you if you can tell me what we're looking at here, please. This is a photograph of a plastic bottle or jug of paint thinner that was found on the workbench at the rear or south side of the garage in a central area of the south wall. Was another specific item that you were looking for and included in Mr. Dassey's statement something called a roller creeper? Yes. And can you tell the jury and those jurors that may not know what that is, what is a roller creeper? I don't have much experience in the automotive work, but I understand a roller creeper is a piece of equipment that, if you will, is a bench, a padded bench often that rests on wheels to allow a person to lay on their back and this bench and roll themselves underneath a motor vehicle so they can conduct work on the underside of the vehicle. Were you able to locate a roller creeper within Mr. Avery's garage? Yes, we did. Let me show you what has been marked as exhibit number 107. Tell us what we're looking at, please. That is a photograph of a roller creeper with the name labeled on the face of it as a Blackjack brand creeper. This was found in this location, which is in the central area of the south wall, basically in the middle of the garage, all the way at the rear of the garage. Just so that before I leave this photo, just to the right of the roller creeper is a green object that has some wheels on it. Do you know what that is? Yes, I do. What is that? The green cylindrical object behind and to the right of the creeper is an air compressor, and it has numerous additional miscellaneous items stacked on top of it. Now, I'm going to go back to exhibit number 105. When we look at the stuff in the garage during the 1st and 2nd of March, were each of those items removed and thoroughly searched? Yes, but not, I don't know if removed is a term I would use. We did not physically remove them from the garage, but they are moved? Yes, our course of action beginning on March 1 was to visually examine virtually every item within that garage, looking for any potential relevance to the investigation based on the statements we had received from Brendan Dassey. Examining these items to determine if we could see any visible biological evidence or other forms of trace evidence. And in doing so, we began in this photograph, the front left corner, which would have been in the northeast corner of the garage, and we proceeded south along the east wall, picking up and moving every object. And in most cases, there were multiple objects stacked on top of, say, a snowmobile or a shelf. Each item was picked up, moved, turned over, examined, and set aside, and we'd move on to the next object. We processed south along the east wall to the corner, and then along the south wall from left to right in this photograph, and ultimately finishing on the following day, March 2nd, coming up along the west wall. Agent Heimerl, once again, based upon statements of Mr. Dassey, were you looking for and did the search warrant authorize a search for bullets or bullet fragments? Yes, it did, and we were looking for those items. I'm going to have you, before I leave this photograph, point out for the jury what's called evidence tent number 9. Could you tell the jury where that's located? Number 9 is located just behind, the white is the snowbank on the outside of the garage, and just behind there, in the right half of the photograph, is marker number 9. I show you now what has been marked as exhibit number 108. Tell the jury what we're looking at, please. This is a photograph again of evidence or photo identification marker number 9 taken from standing above it. You can see a crack in the concrete traveling right underneath the marker. Just in front of that marker edge, right where the cursor is now, there's a small cylindrical gray object that was ultimately recovered and found to be a bullet or a portion of a bullet. Mr. Wiegert just handed you also what's now been marked as exhibit number 114. It's a package, and although it contains an item of evidentiary value with a biological or potentially biological material on it, and I'm not going to ask you to open it, can you tell us what exhibit 114 is? This is identified as a bullet fragment, and the date for the recovery is 3/1/06. Is this the bullet fragment that is depicted in exhibit number 108 next to exhibit tent number 9? I believe it to be yes. Agent Heimerl, I'm now going to show you what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 109. Tell us what that is, please. This is a photograph that was taken on March 2nd, the second day of our search. From the previous photograph of the overview of the garage that we looked at, directly at the back of the garage in the central area of that south wall, we saw the black jack creeper and the green air compressor. In that previous photograph, the green air compressor was directly adjacent to the left side of a large rolling tool chest, which we see in the upper right corner of this photograph. The air compressor and all of the materials were stacked on top, have obviously been removed for this photograph, and marker number 23 identifies a bullet which was found under that air compressor near that back wall in the garage. I show you now exhibit number 110. Tell us what we're looking at here, please. This is a close-up photograph of that same marker number 23. Also in the photograph is a scale or a ruler. Between the number 4 and number 5 on the ruler, just above the edge of the ruler, is a round object, which is the bullet that was located underneath the air compressor. By the way, this bullet that it was next to tent number 23 and also the bullet next to tent number 9, were those recovered by your evidence recovery team and thereafter sent to the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory for further analysis? Yes, they were. Just to complete the discussion of this particular bullet, I'm going to show you photograph 111, ask if you're able to identify that, and Mr. Wiegert's going to also hand you exhibit number 113 to assist you in describing photograph 111 as well. The photograph is a photograph of the same object evidence bag that I'm holding, evidence tag number 8623, which identifies the contents as a bullet fragment that was collected on March 2nd, 2006. And so that the record is clear, the photo of the bullet fragment, what the jury is looking at on their screen, is exhibit number 111. The package itself, the bullet itself, if you will, is exhibit number 113. Is that your understanding? Yes. I'm just going to take a moment to show you a couple of exhibits. This is exhibit 77 that has already been received. It's a computer-generated image created by Trooper Tim Austin. Does this exhibit assist you, or will it assist you in describing for the jury where those 2 bullets were found? Yes. Why don't you take your laser pointer and tell the jury? The first bullet that I described, which was in the crack of the concrete, is in the area of the number 9 marker in the foreground of the garage. The second bullet that we just discussed, number 23 marker, was found at the rear or south side of the garage, directly next to the tool chest. I believe the black rectangular object here is meant to depict the location of the creeper. What is not identified in that photograph is the location or the presence of the green air compressor. And the last exhibit that I want to show you has been received as exhibit number 67. Does this contain the burn barrel, and will this assist you in describing where that was recovered and processed by you? Yes. Would you just describe that for us, please? This is Stephen Avery's trailer, his detached garage. Here's the gravel roadway that I described earlier, and this is the burn barrel that was ultimately recovered that contained the burned electronic components. Contained the Motorola V3 Razr phone, the Canon PowerShot A310 camera, and the Palm Zyre 31 PDA. Is that your understanding? That's correct. And again, that is verified and positively identified by FBI and also Mr. Thomas. Is that correct? Correct. Attorney Kratz. With that, Judge, I'm going to move the admissions of exhibits 95 through 114, and I have no further questions of Agent Heimerl. The court. All right. Is there any objection to these exhibits? Attorney Freeman. No, Judge. The court. Since there are none, the exhibits will be received. I think this is an appropriate time to take a morning break. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Recess had at 10:04 a.m., reconvened at 10:29 a.m. The court. I think we've reached the point where this witness is set for cross-examination. Mr. Freeman? Judge, I think the state wanted to, didn't you want to include 115 in that offer?